We're embarking on the journey to unravel the relationship between poverty, inequality, and the size of the economy within a country to explore bigger picture questions about how it's linked to poverty and inequality. More specifically, as we navigate through landscape, we also examine the fundamental concept that underpin it. In today's episode, we're going to take you to imaginary land from country A to country B, exploring scenarios that unfold when economic growth meets the diverse realities of poverty and inequality. But hold on, is not the straightforward equation. Growth doesn't always lead the same outcome for everyone. As we venture deeper, we uncover the intricacies of economic progress. What drives growth in the first place? Is it all about technology, physical capital, or human capital? Or is there more in the equation, like the infrastructure that paves the way for progress, and the role of government is safeguarding the well-being of its citizens? Have you ever wondered how GDP reflects the heartbeat of nation's economy? How does the distribution of incomes play a crucial role in shaping of the fate of citizens? Our journey doesn't end up. We'll also address the age-old question: why, despite growth, does poverty persist? What barriers stand in the way of equal opportunities for everyone to thrive, irrespective of their identity or their background? So, please fasten your seatbelt, open your mind, and get ready for a dynamic exploration of root causes and finding ingenious solutions for tackling poverty and inequality. This is the Infinity Insight podcast. First, let's run through some basic terms. The size of the economy is often described as gross domestic product, or in shorthand GDP. That's typically defined as the value of all transaction of goods and services within a given year. Another way to think of it is the value of all the goods and services that are purchased by different buyers around the society. The flip side of that is all the goods and services that generate income around the society. In this sense, one way to measure an economy is to add up everyone's income or gross national incomes. When we think about the economy as the sum of the all incomes, we can think about the distribution of incomes. So let's consider an imaginary country uh, called country A with a population of million people. In country A, there is a high quality of income across all million people, but everyone is also very poor. For simplicity, let's say that everyone has an income of around $300 per year. And of course, it's well below the extreme poverty line of $2.15 per day. This means the total size of the economy is around $300 million. In practical terms, country A can only reduce extreme poverty by growing its economy. For instance, if the distribution of income remains equal and the economy triple in size, then in this case, the total economy will be around $900 million. That means growth has led to a massive reduction in extreme poverty without changing inequality. In other words, no one ends up rich by any global standard, but everyone is much less poor than they were at the outset. But let's go to country A before any economy bomb. What if only half the population sees its income triple and the other half sees its income stuck the same? No, half of the population have an income of $900, while the other half still has an income of only $300. So, economic growth has led to a 50% reduction in extreme poverty alongside a major increase in inequality. There are different argue as to whether that's over good or bad for the people in country A, and this is where that things can be tricky. I mean, in practice, some people in this country likely escape poverty before others rather than all of at the same time. This could be theoretically mean a temporary increase in inequality is the first step toward a long-term poverty reduction in economic progress and maybe a subsequent decline in inequality itself, especially if the first people who got out of poverty help create faster and better opportunities for the rest of society to get out of poverty. The relationship between poverty and inequality is not altogether simple. To look a bit deeper, let's consider another country, call it country B. Country B also had a population of 1 million people, but a much higher average income, say around $2,000, and much wider distribution of incomes. In other words, a lot of inequality. Let's say in a country B, around 10% of the population still lives in extreme poverty. Now, we can think about five different scenarios that might take shape for country B's poverty and inequality. In one scenario, the economy grows, but with no change in inequality. It's a good news for poverty reduction, but actually no news for inequality. In the second scenario, the economy grows, but the only people at the top are benefiting. This is a bad news for poverty reduction and even worse news for inequality. In the third scenario, the economy grows, but it's especially the poor people who are benefiting, and the higher income earners aren't benefiting so much. This means both poverty and inequality are coming down. In a fourth scenario, the economy is stagnant and doesn't grow at all. One way to reduce poverty and inequality in this scenario is to tax the highest income earner to provide more support to the lowest income earners, and that means redistribution. This will be good news for poverty reduction and inequality, but also frames a zero sum game between different parts of the society. A fifth and final scenario is similar to the fourth. I mean, the economy is stagnant and doesn't grow, but this time it's because of the inequality in the society. Some leading economists at the International Monetary Fund have found evidence suggesting that lower inequality contributed to faster and more durable growth, which is better for everyone. That means we don't need to think of progress as a zero sum game at all. The upshot of all this is that there is no single relationship between economic growth, poverty, and inequality. We always need to look more closely to the data to understand what goes on in any particular society. This brings us to big question about what causes economy growth in the first place. One approach is to think about the level of output per workers in economy. Another for term for this is labor productivity. Conceptually, we can think about of how much each workers produce, whether that's a farmer, a factory worker, a nurse, or a computer engineer, as a function of many things like how healthy they are and how much education they have been able to access, which is often called human capital. Moreover, we can think about the number of tools and machines they have access to. In the economy, this is often described as physical capital. We can also think about the type of tools and machines they have access to. This is often described as technology. No, at this point, we can formalize all of these with the basic stylist equation. You can see it here: Y, A, K, and H. Y represent the average per workers. K is the average physical capital per worker. H, human capital, and A is the level of technology. The alpha and beta exponent ultimately tell us how much each extra unit of physical and human capital inputs contribute to the outputs. So, outputs per worker grows when one of the A, K, or H terms grows: technology, physical capital, or human capital. But of course, no one operates alone in an economy. So other issue matters too. Things like how easy is it to access inputs from suppliers or transport products to consumer, to road and waterways or phones and the internet. Economists call this infrastructure, which is often part of the K term or public capital in a broader form of the growth equation. We also have to worry about how easy is it for a worker to connect with people who have complementary skills that are essential to their success. There are different ways of representing in an equation, but the simplest way to think about is through the composition of the skills in that H term and through the sophistication of systems that connect people with a specialized skill, which can embed in Atom for technology. There is another big issue. How efficient is the government in protecting the workers and their families, and in turn supporting the efficient allocation of capital? The government's effectiveness can be thought of either as a form of public institutional capital or embedded in an expansive notion of societal technology. And of course, history is also a factor. For example, the Harvard economist Nathan Noam has published important statistical assessments suggesting that more than 100 years of the historical slave trade from Africa explain a significant share of Africans' lowest average income today compared to other developing regions. So, this is another big question. Why have some places been poor for so long without ever seeing much economic growth? This is again a tricky question, and the answer depends on how long a lens one applies when we're looking at the situation. The first thing to note is that the majority of the world's poorest people are farmers who living in a rural area. And for these smallholder farmers, the challenge of economic growth comes down to the challenge of growing plants, meaning they need to grow more plants and sell more products at the market will pay the highest price. Uh, Let me focus on the plants for this moment. And as we know, they require water, soil nutrients, and strong seeds to grow. But many of the poorest farmers have trouble accessing any of these since they are too expensive. So they are unable to save enough to make an investment for the next year's crop, and this is a sense of the saving best power to crop. Even a farmer were able to a way to triple the size of the product where they would sell it. Is there a good enough road to get to nearby city? Is this a crop that they can potentially find a way to sell it abroad, or how they do avoid flooding the market for this product in a manner that mitigate the potential to boost incomes? During the last 40 cases, the 1980 countries that cut the extreme poverty decisively often did so by answering this type of questions. In places where most of the population was stagnant low productivity, the smallholder farming for generations, they figure out ways to get water, soil nutrients, and strong seeds to get better plants. They also figure out to ensure the farmers could this good market to sell the products growing for these plants, and over time farmers produce and earn surpluses that free up workers to move to the city. They grow saving to investing in new business away from the farm, and then that earn even higher incomes. Economists describe this as a structural transformation, but to be sure, not all extreme people are farmers. And what I just said isn't the same story everywhere. I mean, as we know, many extremely poor people live in city, for example, and again, not every country escape extreme poverty through the agriculture. But if you are wondering why a country's economy isn't growing, it's often a good place to start by asking what preventing workers from producing more and better products. Well, the final question for today's episode is why poverty persists even there is growth? Very often the answer is that most people who are born in poverty they also stay in poverty because they don't get the same opportunities to do all the things that they are required to earn better income, good education, have a good home, to live in a safe home, and to enjoy the physical security. Some societies don't provide much buffer either to protect people who might have some form of log shock, for example, a health shock that leads to a job loss, or a job loss that leads to homelessness, which in turn leads to difficulty in finding new job. This is often called a gap in social protection, the ability to help people withstand big life surprise and shock that are so common to many. But there are often deeper challenges too, in terms of why some people are less likely to have access to equal opportunities. Too often is related to some aspect of their identity. You know, their gender, race, ethnicity, indigenous status, religion, geography, language, sexual orientation, disability status, or what you name it. Issue of exclusion, bias, and inequality renders some people more prone to being caught in poverty or subject to inequality. Okay, it's time to recap today's episode. We learned there is no single relationship between economic growth, poverty reduction, and inequality, nor is there any single cause of economic growth. On one hand, this means we always need to look below the surface to unpack the complexity within a society. And on the other hand, it usually also means there are lots of practical ways to make progress on different pieces of a society's overall puzzle. That the good news and some things we all can work on more. And as I said before, believe it or not, change is possible when we stand together.
10% of the people in the world live in extreme poverty, with less than $2 a day to live on. 30 million children grow up poor in the world's richest countries. Some people think poverty is too big a problem to do anything about, so they don't try. But just because something is hard doesn't mean that we can ignore it. Poverty isn't fair and isn't right, and there are lots of things that you can do to fight it right now. Ending poverty is everyone's job, so there's no excuse for not getting involved. Go out, campaign, invent something big, or do something small. It doesn't matter. If you just do something, your actions can make a huge difference.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, buckle up for an unforgettable ride because that's concluded today's mind-blowing episode. And we're just getting started, and we want you to be part of our movement. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button to ensure you never miss a moment of this captivating content. Until next time, keep those phenomenal vibe flowing. Stay curious, stay awesome. See you on the flip side. Bye.